A new threat to the nation's public health and safety is causing concern today, and it could be right in front of us. Hear why scientists are warning the American people to stay away from that weird-looking bird over there. And later, birds aren't the only animals causing danger today. We have the latest on a clinical trial being conducted on a mouse that went horribly wrong, and now the mouse has a gun. From The Onion and Onion Public Radio, I'm Leslie Price, and this is The Topical. If you really need me to convince you to stick around for all the day's top stories, then maybe you're not as committed to news as I thought. And maybe we're just not meant to be. So go ahead and do whatever you want right after this. Following a year-long study out of Stanford University, scientists are issuing a dire warning today, urging all Americans to stay away from that weird-looking bird. Here's lead researcher Emily Carden.
Americans should avoid going anywhere near the bird, as it's been confirmed that we have no idea where it's been. There's no way to know what this bird's deal is, but you can tell there's something wrong with it. It's doing a weird thing with its wings, and it just looks all grimy.
We're joined now by OPR avian correspondent Alan Potts for his perspective on the bird being over there. Hello, Alan.
Hi, Leslie.
Alan, what should the American public know about this disgusting bird?
Well, Leslie, the bird clearly has something going on. Its feathers are all disheveled, and it's just kind of laying all by itself on the ground. Here's what witnesses had to say.
I mean, it's not bothering anyone, but there's nothing preventing it from suddenly flying up into someone's face and getting its bird germs everywhere. I'm a veterinarian, and I wouldn't go near that thing.
A couple minutes ago, it was walking in a fairly large circle and pecking at its feathers. Seems bad, especially because his feathers seem a little dirty. Ugh. Although it could just be a brown bird. I'm no expert or anything.
Chilling stuff. Alan, is it possible this bird could be rabid?
Well, we don't have enough information to know for sure, but I wouldn't advise anyone get close enough to it to make that determination. We simply don't know what this bird is capable of, and so it's in the public's best interest to just avoid contact.
Sure, but are there any precautions that we can take if we do want to go near the bird?
Again, I would strongly advise against going near the bird, as it could have some kind of disease or parasite, and it could make a scary noise if you get too close.
Right.
However, if you absolutely cannot stay away from the bird, experts recommend using some kind of stick to poke at it from a bit of a distance, and maybe wear gloves.
Excellent advice, especially for anyone out there crazy enough to go near that thing. I know I won't be. I got enough dead pets at home.
Oh God, Leslie, it just started flapping its wings really fast, but without flying, and then it just kind of rolled itself off the sidewalk and under a car. Oh my God, that was so gross.
What? Well, go do something.
Do what?
I don't know. Go step on it or something.
I'm not going near it.
Jesus fucking Christ, this is so gross. We'll be back in a moment. Alan, for God's sake, put it out of its misery. Pizza. It's Italy's one contribution to the world, but when it comes to standards for how we get our food with our honestly earned blood money, some companies have fallen behind. Today, OPR's token Italian-American correspondent Celeste Rigatoni is here with the story behind some spicy accusations being hurled at America's most settled-for pizza company. Celeste, welcome.
This is Rebecca Neal. I don't think anyone named Celeste Di Rigatoni works here, Leslie.
Well, as long as you're here to tell us about pizza, I don't care who you are.
Fantastic. I'll get started. People for the ethical treatment of animals are leveling some serious claims of animal abuse against coagulated pizza magnate Papa John's, specifically their cruel treatment of the bulbous, deformed livestock that lactate their signature pizza sauce. Take a listen.
For decades, Papa John's has kept a tight, non-resealable lid on the living conditions of their trademark lab-engineered sauce-lactating fauna, completely closing off the beast's quarters from any visitors. For years, we were sure this was a red flag, and we were right. Now we finally have the evidence that proves it.
That's PETA activist Heather Dennings leading a protest outside the Louisville Marinara processing plant early this morning. I was able to catch up with her after her rousing address to the crowd.
Heather, over here. May I ask you a few
You are being lied to. Papa John's has been knowingly profiting off the suffering of these poor, gentle giants to produce millions of exploitative, saucy pizzas the uninformed public blindly consumes each year.
Please, just put down your megaphone for, 1 second.
I will not be silenced by the complacent establishment. I speak for these fully sentient, innocent mutants who cannot speak for themselves due to lack of discernible mouths and/or vocal cords. So what if they don't have eyes? Do they not faces? Adequate room to stretch their 5 or 7 or however many legs and run and play? When was the last time you saw a play?
Once I got far enough away from her that my ears stopped ringing, Heather told me that the dozens of animals inside the Louisville factory farm have been responsible for the entirety of Papa John's red sauce production over the years, bred over and over and pumped full of hormones for the sole purpose of extracting fresh tomato paste from their many teat-like protuberances, without regard for the health of the revolting creatures themselves.
Mamma mia.
I think it's pronounced Mamma Mia.
I don't think so. Well, listen, Rebecca, if we're talking sauces, I gotta tell you, I can't get enough of that Papa J's garlic dipping sauce.
Well, Leslie, you might not feel that way after hearing this disturbing audio from inside the farm, captured by an undercover PETA activist. Listen.
Oh my god. Okay, what I'm seeing, all the windows are boarded up. Hundreds of hairless animals. Are they animals? I've never seen this shape before. They're all basically on top of one another, all biting one another, covered in infected sores, wallowing in their own thick, garlicky waste all the way up to their haunches. No living being, no matter how utterly horrifying, deserves to live like this. Oh, gross. Alfredo. Okay. It looks like each animal has 6 draining needles attached to its swollen skin, pumping reddish pulp straight into the bulk tank, even now in the middle of the night. I'm going to approach one. Hey there, big fella. Don't be scared. That's it. Shh. Wait a second. It's awake and eating. Oh, God. It's eating its own body.
Oh, that's horrifying. Rebecca, forgive me if this is a silly question, but aren't there other ways one can go about making pasta sauce or even the garlic sauce?
While every major pizza chain uses the same method, albeit their own recipe, of genetically engineered beasts to discharge their sauces, there are USDA standards of care that must be met, with some chains going above and beyond. California Pizza Kitchen, for example, lets their prized gravy dispensers roam on wide-open pastures of basil and oregano, and Domino's operates a buffalo saucer sanctuary on the side where retired critters can be pet by children. So there's no excuse for this cruelty from Papa John's.
Well, surely Papa John has an explanation for all this.
We've been over this, Leslie. Papa John is not a real person. John Schnatter was a disturbing figment of your ever-unraveling subconscious. And anyway, Papa John's, the company, declined my offer to refute these accusations on air, but the press rep did send the following statement.
No, I want to read it. Give me that. Me, host. We at Papa John's have spent years perfecting our proprietary blend of spices, bones, and mutated cells that hold no other purpose than to excrete our delicious, zesty marinara. Any so-called humane changes to the sauce creature's environment would negatively affect that special Papa John's flavor. And like we always say, better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's. Well, it all sounds perfectly logical to me. Farm to Table is very in right now.
Hey, Leslie, look! They sent a coupon.
Oh, fuck yeah! I'm starving. That burger earlier didn't really cut it. We'll be back in a moment. Hello, Papa? Trees. They're all around us, but who gives a shit? Well, I do for one, and you probably should too. We need trees. For paper, for climbing, for pulling a leaf off of something living in order to feel powerful. But who's looking out for the tree's survival, their quality of life, and their reproduction? They reproduce. Maybe I know even less about trees than I thought. But never fear, because there are some folks out there who do care. And this week, a dedicated group of arborists petitioned Congress for a change they say is long overdue.
These restrictions are an outdated relic of the past. The tree that lent its fiber to write the Constitution had no idea what our contemporary society would do to its brothers and sisters. Join us in liberating these conifers and broadleaves. We need to stop legislating morality and lower the age of consent for trees.
I'm joined by OPR congressional correspondent Marcy Hammond, who has the latest. Marcy, what should our listeners know about these crusaders for sexual freedom?
Well, Leslie, the modern fight against the high age of consent goes back almost half a century to the environmental and sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s.
Sure.
Contemporary arborists claim that many saplings are fully mature before they even start to flower, and more importantly, that the government should not be dictating morality or sexual agency. Several of the advocates spoke out this morning on Capitol Hill.
These laws are unnecessary government coddling. They impose harsh penalties on anyone who violates their puritanical social norms. Some pine trees are producing cones as early as 2 years old. There's nothing disgusting about that.
These seedlings are beautiful creatures with smooth bark and supple, flexible branches. They're in the prime of their life and should be allowed to express themselves how they see fit. They may only have a few rings on their trunk, but that doesn't mean they're naive or immature.
Weird. What's your take on this, Marcy?
Well, this arborist movement was on the fringe of environmental policy for years, but recently, as more and more people flock to the outdoors, it's gained momentum. Now there are dozens of message boards and websites dedicated to celebrating young trees and advocating for their greater reproductive freedom.
And what do these activist groups see as the downside with age of consent laws for trees? Can't they just, wait a little?
Well, they mainly see it as a violation of personal liberty. What an oak or birch sprout does in the privacy of its own grove shouldn't be within the government's purview. And by setting a legal age at which trees are allowed to reproduce, it stigmatizes young trees' sexuality in a way that's harmful and repressive.
Interesting. Does this movement have any chance of succeeding?
Well, right now, it's still very much an uphill battle. Age of consent laws for trees have been around for hundreds of years and have political support from both sides of the aisle. Conservatives in particular are concerned about the effects of lowering legal age, like how will these trees care for their 400 kids scattered around the forest, and will they get enough sunlight?
Right. So overall, lawmakers at the federal level believe that eliminating this law will just encourage even more pollinating.
Exactly. Still, the activists are insisting that history will vindicate their stance and that opponents are demonizing them and their obsession with young saplings.
These laws are relics. For a budding nubile tree, wanting to reproduce is natural. They should be allowed to follow their desires. An 8-year-old sycamore is perfectly capable of choosing for itself. Who cares if the other tree is 300?
This is natural. These young trees have perfect shapely crowns and sweet, juicy fruit, and then someone is gross for wanting to pollinate it. Back in the 1800s, trees that were 3 or 4 years old used to spawn. Things were more open back then, and it was fine. If the fruit's on the ground, it's ready to pound.
It looks like they're committed to fighting this out over the long term.
Yes, there's even a case involving a young birch tree going all the way to the Supreme Court.
Will be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, Marcy, I think this is pretty obvious, but I do have to ask. These arborists, they just want to fuck those trees, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Honestly, with all the effort they're putting in, it would have been pretty weird if they didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, thanks for that report, Marcy. That's OPR's Marcy Hammond. Back in a moment. Well, you're never going to believe this, but it turns out that bird was just some toddler. Crazy. Anyway, here's what else you need to know today. A week after restricting transactions on a number of stocks like GameStop and AMC, the individual investor app Robinhood is under fire and has even been hit with a class action lawsuit by a team of Redditors who are alleging that Robinhood be on some bitch shit. The class action suit claims that the brokerage was singling out some online investors all because their, quote, big brain moves totally pwned some Wall Street cucks and now we got the bag. Will be interesting to see if these Redditors are able to buy the dip and hold on to their hard-earned tendies. And some important safety information for parents today, as experts are now saying that children can drown in as little as 1 inch of water if you really know what you're doing. Good to know. And finally, there was absolutely no scientific discovery today after an embarrassed team of archaeologists unearthed nothing but a big empty hole in the ground. What a bummer. And that's the Topical for today. I'm Leslie Price. If you enjoyed today's episode, you're probably the only one, and you should go like and subscribe to The Topical wherever you get your podcast, because one is better than none. And if you and you alone are also feeling so inclined, you can also sign up to become a member of The Topical's Patreon, where for as little as $5 a month, you'll have access to all kinds of exclusive news content, including my weekly Q&A segment, Leslie's Mail Sack. And for just $10 a month, you'll receive an on-air shout-out in one of our episodes where I will personally thank you by name. Today's shout-out goes to Adam and Steve. Great job, fellas. Way to prove all those homophobes wrong. We'd also like to take a moment to shout out two members of our $25 tier, Wesley Wilkinson and Mick Beauchamp. Wesley, Mick, normally that type of generosity would earn you some high praise, but today it couldn't mean less to me because right now we're also shouting out someone very special to the topical community, our most generous patron to date, the one and only member of our non-existent $40 tier, Manuel Mendoza. Manuel, your generosity might not earn you anything extra than Wesley or Mick, but it definitely makes you a better person than them. And I hope becoming a member of our Patreon has filled you with whatever must have been lacking in your once empty and meaningless life. So from everyone here at The Topical, Manuel, keep it coming. And as for the rest of you lowlifes, go sign up to become a member of our Patreon now. And don't forget to tune into tomorrow's episode of The Topical for a conversation with a wise and thoughtful elder with a lifetime's worth of knowledge who just won't put a fucking sock in it. Jesus, this guy knows everything except for when to shut the hell up. And you won't want to miss it? I don't know, whatever. We'll see you tomorrow. The news doesn't stop just because this YouTube video has. For even more on all the worst things happening in the world right now, listen and subscribe to The Topical on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, you insatiable news freaks.